Darling. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Hilary. Thank you, everybody. So happy to be here together for this little hour. Let's make the most of it. So I'm just going to say some words and we're going to just listen. And I'm listening too, as I'm saying it, I'm processing it, trying to make it real, for myself as well. Just this 1 hour so that we can listen, so we can begin to develop our own amazing potential, which is the job of working on your mind. And then on the basis of this, we start to realize that everybody's in the same boat. And we can kind of expand our mind to encompass others, and that's a compassion wing. So for this reason, we're together for this little hour. So every word I'm saying here is coming from Buddhism. If I'm making anything up that's really outrageous, you should throw me out immediately. Maybe I'm saying it in a casual way and I'm saying it with an Australian accent, but it's still Buddhist teachings, straight from the mouth of the Buddha, through the interpretations of these Tibetan lamas, who are my teachers, and His Holiness and all my gurus, and then going back to the great Nalanda tradition in India, right back to the Buddha. This lineage, So there's helping others, but the first we have to help ourselves. It's such a simple way to put it. And what does that mean? What does it mean, It means to know our mind. Why? Because the Buddhists use, and these words are simple. We probably heard these 40,000 times, but the words are unbelievably simple. But to actually hear it and do it is incredibly difficult because we're addicted to the opposite. And the words are, the Buddha's central view is that the thoughts that go on in our mind, the thoughts in our mind, every second of the day, produce the person we become. That's it, So he divides all these thoughts into the unhappy, I-based, fear-based thoughts. And these ones have two functions. They are very disturbing. They cause us to be so upset. Now look at that alone, have a look at that. Because if if you're agitated and upset, if you're angry or hurt or jealous, you're hurt, it's jealousy. You identify the name of the word, the thought is jealousy. And it's very painful. But then what you do is you look at the outside, the boyfriend in this case, and are convinced that that's the problem. And that's why you're jealous. So whether it's anger, anxiety, attachment, it's the same. We know we've got it. We know it's painful. We agree with Buddha. We know it's disturbing. But we believe it's the external event that should change. It's the external event that's the problem. These are the words. I mean, from here to Buddhahood, these are the words we are trying to change. These are the words we're trying to apply. The meaning of this becomes ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, ever more subtle, all the way to realizing emptiness when we study the Buddhist teachings. This is it. But it is the hardest thing only because we are addicted to believing it is the boyfriend, to believing it's the food, to believe it's the problem, the house we live in, the people we work with, the people who, whatever it is. We believe it appears to us like that. It appears to us like that. The thoughts are telling us that, and we believe that. That's the killer. This is why, and it's the hardest thing in the world, one of the first steps, because you can't get the thoughts to go away. They're intensely deep and they're habitual. We're talking about the negative ones. So there's two different approaches, actually. One approach is to work hands-on in the negative thoughts themselves. The other approach is to activate the good ones, activate positive thoughts. This is a powerful antidote. So let's look at that one. Let's look at that one. Some people have that capacity, but no, we all have that capacity. But I think because the negative ones loom so large, they shout so loud, and what they say to us is what appears to us from the outside, so we believe them. And it's hard for us to even notice our own good thoughts. This is one of our major problems, So one of the most powerful practices is to focus on our good thoughts, to cultivate good thoughts, to cultivate positive thoughts, to cultivate wise thoughts. I mean, it's like there's a script in our head, isn't it? There's a very elaborate script, and we could write it all down. That's the way we see life. So we have to write a new script. And the thing is, the potential for our good thoughts are there. We have got kindness, we have got generosity, we have got the wish to be ethical, to be truthful, to be kind, to be loving, to be generous, to be self-respectful, to be self-confident. All that is there. But when the negative ones are running the show, we can't see or hear those parts of ourselves. We can see this, we understand this. So why is it then we should believe the good thoughts, but not the negative ones? Why? Because this is what Lama Zopa says, bad enough we see things in a mistaken way because of the anxiety, let's say, or the anger, or the fears, or the jealousy. The thing out there, the boyfriend, the event, looks exactly the way we're thinking it. Bad enough that we think it, he said, but the worst part is we believe it. This sounds very abstract for us. It sounds hard to believe, hard to understand. What do you mean I shouldn't believe what I'm thinking? But it's true what I'm thinking. The boyfriend did they did punch me. That's not what's been argued with. He did punch you, yes. But sometimes the lies in the mind are double trouble. Sometimes when you think the boyfriend punched you, but he even didn't. So bad enough, so this is often when the suffering is really bad. When we literally, and these delusions they make up stories. They make up things. And this is where we have to understand the character of attachment and aversion and this intimate relationship between these two, which run the show every day. Attachment is this bottomless pit of emotional hunger that always wants more because we're never satisfied, moment by moment. So that is already the arising of anger. The dissatisfaction is a function of attachment, but already it turns into aversion. Because dissatisfaction means you get something, but it's not enough. So that second you crave to get it, and then you get it and you're still hungry. So it's like attachment and aversion are so linked together. So it's hard. This is long-term practice. It's long-term practice. It's very hard to control our thoughts. We can see that. It's very hard to control them. But one of the jobs we can learn to do, and this is also hard, it's impossibly hard, it's very difficult, is to stop believing them. And that just seems puzzling in the beginning. What do you mean not believe them? They're true. That is happening. But like, again, I was just, that woman I always quote, the one in prison, Sunny, who's not in prison now, she's in Ireland, and she's old and she's getting sick, she's in a wheelchair. So she's got another problem, before she was in prison and now she's in a wheelchair. So there's always something in life, right? And we were talking, we speak from time because I support her work. My bodhicitta trust supports her work. So we're discussing, and she said, yeah, it's just the same as when I was in prison. I have a choice. It was a nightmare. The situation was awful. But she said, I knew I had a choice to see it differently, and I knew I had the choice to see the good things. This sounds so unbelievably corny, we can't believe it. It's like a joke, because when you really feel like you've got so much anxiety or anger about your situation, whatever that situation might be, and all you see is the bad things, it seems like a cruel joke to say there are some good things because you can't see them. And this is the most powerful practice we have to try to do. Because if you can change it, then please change it. If she could got out of prison, I'm sure she would have been happy. Give her a key, she would have gone out, but she couldn't. So right now she can't leave her wheelchair. Same thing. She can't. She hasn't got the luxury of standing up. So what is she doing? She's making the most of it. She's keeping her mind steady. It is a problem, but she sees the good things. This seems so pathetic almost. It seems almost like naive, but it is profound. Because everybody has some problem. It's the nature of being in samsara. Everybody's got a problem. Everybody's got some problem or another. And depending on our mind, the problem will appear big or small. Of course, when it appears big to us, we believe it is big, we're going crazy with anxiety or anger or despair. Of course, there's not a millimeter of space in our mind to even think there's a possibility of seeing it differently. But this is the miracle. In the Buddhist teachings, they talk about interdependence and emptiness. This is the most advanced level of how the mind makes up everything. And one person said to His Holiness, well, how do I put emptiness into daily practice? And his answer was ridiculously simple, but it's logical. He said, try to see things from a different point of view. And this is exactly the point, because the delusions are tunnel vision. Anger, anxiety are absolute, completely set in stone, completely fixed, frozen in space, fundamentalist, panic-stricken, set in stone viewpoints in the mind. That's what they are. The extent of the emotion we have is the extent of that rigidity, you know. So of course we have to first understand our own this tendency in ourselves, then we can help others. If we don't understand this tendency in ourselves, we can't help others. So, you know, this what's interesting too, you've got these neurotic states of mind, we've got these intentional afflictions, as the word Buddhism uses, which have this function of being very disturbing. So the body literally shakes. So when we're really suffering out, we think we're going mad because it's physically painful, but that's the tip of the iceberg. The fundamental one is these stories in the mind that are very habitual, that are rising up, looming large, and their story is what makes things appear that way, and we believe they are that way, and then we're set in stone. That's it. An antidote, you know, so you add to that, you see, we've got lots of mental qualities. We've got the delusions and we have the virtues. And one of our virtues, you know, might be kindness, generosity, forgiveness, ethics. You know, another one might be super intelligent. Intelligence, it doesn't have, intelligence in its nature is not a virtue. It's only when it's rooted in proper wisdom, in ethics and interdependence that it's reasonable. But we can have a super intelligent mind. When you mix intelligence with this out of control berserk attachment, and that's when you know, you can make yourself go completely insane. Because it sounds very reasonable what you're saying to yourself. So to try to see things differently is the most profound teaching. That's applying dependent arising, and it's helping you. And that's exactly what Sunny did. She's not a Buddhist. She likes the Buddhist idea of a way of life, but she's not a Buddhist. She doesn't think about, you know, karma or anything. She's not practicing a Buddhist practice in the sense we're discussing here. I'm not trying to insult her. She's like, but she said, I think like a Buddhist, and she does. But you know, she hasn't studied these ideas that we're discussing. But she has this ability, and that's also called patience. Because you see, anger is when you see the thing you don't want, you have a panic attack. Anger is like a panic attack. It's what it is. It's anger, and anger is thwarted attachment. So attachment is driving the show every second, you know, and the energy of it, the overriding energy of attachment is never satisfied, never satisfied. That can be very powerful for some people. No matter what happens, no matter what you get, no matter what happens, no matter how good things are, you're never satisfied. So then you find fault. So dissatisfaction and swings over into aversion immediately. And so it's always negative. Everything is always negative. It's automatic. And no matter what solution you find, you're still negative. No matter what you get, still negative. No matter how good things are, still negative. It's an incredible mental suffering. Join the universe, people. This is called samsara. So patience is a profound state of mind. It's not just passive aggression, which is how we often hear it. So you can say with Sunny, hers was not passive aggression. It was genuine patience. That means it's like an intelligence that can see, I can't change this situation. So let me see let me see how I can make the most of it. Let me see how I can see the good. It's not being Pollyanna, it's being practical. But when the aversion is so strong and you believe it, you even hear when someone says to you, try and see the good things. It doesn't make it's sort of like, what are you talking about? Just shut up, you know, look at this pain. Can't you see the suffering I'm having? So it's very hard, but she's obviously got this ability. She has to have from past practice. This is a miracle. It's our saving grace if we can do this, you know. And the thing about this attachment is never satisfied, no matter what. So then you've got a problem, you know, you've got a problem, you articulate it. When we're addicted, like if a person really hates themselves, is always unhappy, always pains and suffering and negative, no matter how many good things you say to that person about themselves or their situation, and this is how we all are, they literally can't hear it. They literally can't hear it. Literally can't hear it. Like you're lying to them. But things aren't good, Robina. What are you talking about? What do you mean? But whereas someone like Sunny could see it, you know, and that's what we have to train to do. So demands, it's like patience, but also humility. Because anger and arrogance go very too much together. This is kind of fascinating. Anger and arrogance, like this hubris, how dare it be like this? How dare they do this to me? That's arrogance and anger together. So patience and humility go together, but it's strong, it's not weak. I mean, we know the mind, paranoia is a lovely word, all these Greek words as usual. It means when something, like because there's attachment to be seen, to have everything nice. And then the moment something like person doesn't treat, you think they're not treating you properly. You think they're not doing what they should do. So then what happens is you literally start to make up, you imagine what they're thinking. You imagine what they're thinking, and then you go into these stories, and you can't stop the story. And before you know it, you're going to die. Everything's just the most worst disaster. You've literally written a movie script that's based on nothing. It's just based on fear. That's what the delusions do. They make up. Once a small thing happens, you interpret it. Oh my God, what's he thinking? That means he doesn't hate me. That means he's no good. And he's out there conspiring against me. He's doing this and he's doing that. And he's going to throw me in the river. We literally run rampant with fantasy stories of what we think is going to happen, all because based on one tiny thing that we think he said or did. And then the mind cannot stop these stories. We all know this. So it's incredibly hard to stop these stories until we're quite advanced, So therefore, the thing is to not believe them. Because fears in their nature. One way fear is it makes up things that might happen. This is what anxiety is. We imagine every imaginable worst thing possible happening. And because we imagine it, we think it's true. That's where we have to see that it might happen. But it hasn't happened. So then what, but we make it up. We think it's going to happen. We completely complete making up stories every second. This is when we're seriously suffering. And this is happening mildly all the time, So we've got to catch the mind, and it's so hard. So that's a brutal job. It's a really intense job, full on, drilling down into your mind. But the other approach is to activate the good qualities. Like Sunny said, to see the good things. Instead of obsessively thinking about her wheelchair and it doesn't work, she's got to get another expensive wheelchair now, and her husband's sick and something else because of this, and therefore this one we're going to do about this and about that. She could identify 47 problems as a result of this wheelchair. She could, but she doesn't. She sees it. She recognizes it's true. This is one of the obstacles in my life. How am I going to make the most of it? So what happens? Her mind is sane. Her mind keeps steady. So it's hard to control our thoughts because of habit, that's all. It's hard to control our thoughts, but it's habit. And the other thing is because we have so much attachment and aversion, it's hard to see our good qualities. We love to see the bad ones. We're bitter. When we're miserable, we're addicted to misery. And this has not been cruel. We are addicted to seeing things in the worst possible light. We are addicted to that. This has not been cruel to us. This is the tragedy of the tendency of attachment and aversion. We're addicted to seeing problems and then believing they're true. In other words, seeing problems and then believing they're set in stone. You might have a problem. Sunny has got a problem. When she was on damn death row, she had a problem. It was a problem. But she didn't lose her sanity. I knew I had a choice, she said. But when we're suffering, we don't think we have a choice because we believe the problem is absolute. It's a real problem. What do you mean I've got a choice? It's real, and we're convinced it's out there. We don't think it's got anything to do with the way we're seeing it. So that's the thing. We think the problem is the outside thing that our mind is analyzing. That's not the problem. The problem is the analysis. The problem is the mind. So it's not saying there aren't problems, but sometimes we literally make up problems. We literally make up problems. That's where it's hard to see. And the addiction to it, kind of we swim into it, we launch towards it, we're magnetized by problems. We're delighted to find a problem. Look, I'm right, I'm right. Look, there is a problem. Look, I told you there's a problem. We're happy to find the problem. But nothing set in stone. This statement is literally saying what Buddha says, that things have no intrinsic nature. Things are impermanent. Things are interdependent. So what do? We try to do our best every day. This is why it's good to have a practice. a disciplined practice in the morning. You know, if we've committed to our being a Buddhist, we've taken refuge, we've got our lay vows, let's say, or whatever, we have our little morning practice where we have the Buddha there, we sit down, we do our 3 prostrations, we sit down, we do a bit of mindfulness, we do a bit of reading and thinking, just to sort of loosen our hearts, you know. Then maybe visualize the Buddha. This is a very powerful practice. It opens your heart and makes you connected. Then you do your best throughout the day. And then you do your purification at the end of the day. Try to be reasonable with yourself. Try to be a bit softer with ourselves. Because aversion and attachment are kind of brutal. They're kind of they're very kind of rigid. They're extremely painful. You know, I was talking to someone recently about impermanence. I mean, Buddha's telling us that everything's impermanent. But because we have an instinct that things are permanent, when we hear about it, we're kind of shocked. Oh, you mean I'm going to die? You mean you're going to die? Oh, well, then I might as well give up. If everything's impermanent, I might as well die. I mean, everything is impermanent. So we have to learn to live life within the fact that everything's impermanent. But the good side, you see, but when we hear that, we all see the negative side. Oh my God, I'm going to die. Oh my God, you're going to die. Oh my God, that's going to end. Well, then how can I have anything? But, you know, the impermanence also points to the good. But we don't see that. We just love to see the bad. Impermanence means you're not set in stone. Impermanence means that situations can change. Impermanence means that your mind can change. But we only see it as a bad thing that things are impermanent, you know. So we have to try and focus on the good. It takes effort. And to see our good qualities. I can't just stress this enough. It's unbelievable. To see our good qualities, because that's our saving grace. They are sane, they are clear, they're relaxed, they're spacious, and we start to see ourselves in a good light, and then we can see others. Because we can also see, when we're overwhelmed by this pain, we can't see past our own nose. We are totally self-absorbed. And again, I'm not being critical. Our hearts should break for our own suffering. You know? Then it's like softness towards ourselves. Then we can see the suffering of others and help them, and have patience with them, and kindness towards them, you know, and see their good qualities and show them their good qualities. Point them out, you know, that's what love is. So it is hard to see that our mind is the problem. We think it's the thing that's the problem. It's hard to see that the delusions at different levels of them make up stories, you know, they exaggerate, they distort, they exaggerate. Our mothers would tell us, you're making mountains out of molehills. It sounds infuriating when you're a little girl freaking out like the whole world has collapsed because your sister was mean to you. I mean, I'm not being sarcastic. You can see this child having a complete mental breakdown. You remember it yourself. And then after you've calmed down, you realize that you exaggerated it. That's what anger does. Anger exaggerates. Attachment exaggerates. They exaggerate. This is hard to see, but it's so logical. Delusions make mountains out of molehills. Now that sounds cruel when you talk about Sunny being on death row when she was falsely accused of murder with her husband. Her husband even got executed. His head burst into flames when they killed him, and she saw it. She was in his prison for 17 years. I mean, you can't find as many problems in your whole life. You know, if you want to quantify problems. But she didn't make even intense hard work. She said occasionally, you know, she's been in a cell for years on end on her own with a Bible. That was it. God knows what happened. I disappeared. So, you know, there she is. I mean, you know, this is how she talked. She's in a cell on her own. Her husband had been executed. She's accused of murdering 2 policemen. She'd lost her children because her parents had died in a car accident, so they were given to the state. One nightmare after another. And she'd be in her cell, you know, like, and she said, I'd have my pity parties, and then I'd pick myself up, she said, and I'd decide to see the good things. I mean, this is inconceivable. The courage of that, the absolute courage. She said, I'd give myself permission to be angry for 5 minutes, and then I'd stop. She had this incredible will, incredible determination. She knew, obviously from past practice, you know, she didn't learn it in this life. She knew she could change her mind. She knew she could see things differently. And that meant she could stay sane and stay courageous and stay compassionate and stay not self-loathing and not full of rage and despair. I mean, I just can't get over this example. She's the most astonishing example, you know. exactly how we're talking in the Buddhist understanding of the mind and what we can do, what we're capable of. And this does not mean this, saying we make mountains out of molehills, saying we're addicted to misery is not diminishing our suffering. It's very real suffering. And the trouble in the West is we say, oh, it's all in the mind, like as if it's not real. It isn't real, but the suffering is real. The suffering is real. The suffering is unbearable. But it's from the mind, not from the external. You can even say that with her. It sounds so shocking to talk this way. And it proves nothing has an intrinsic nature. Even death row, you can change the way you see it. Like my friend Mitchell on death row in Kentucky, living in this garbage dump place in his orange jumpsuit, or his red jumpsuit. The death row guys have red jumpsuits. There's 40 of them in their own environment, all, getting closer to their death dates. And he's just this marvelous practitioner, does his practice every day, completely content, does not complain, doesn't get angry, doesn't get anxious, he helps other others. He's learned to see it differently, just the way Sunny did. And that's what we all have to learn to do. And then the point about that is, when there are problems, your mind is still sane, so you can work on it. But if you're out of your brain with anxiety and panic and anger and rage, you can't lift a finger to do anything. You're just completely paralyzed. This is suffering. I'm pointing out our suffering. It's not criticizing us, not to make us guilty. But if we can't locate the problem, how can we locate the solution? We can't, But it's hard to hear it. The mind is the problem. It's hard to hear it. It's hard to hear this, but this is the point. And then the other thing is, because the mind is not going to change overnight, we have to have the courage to live with it. This is where one of the big misconceptions about meditation, because we're so full of pain, and we've heard that meditation can fix it, we're sort of desperate. It's like an alternative to a pill, isn't it? So now we think, oh, good, now my pain will all go away if I meditate. It's a joke to say that. Of course it won't. It's ridiculous. It's not a magic pill. It's not a magic trip. It's a method to help you see your mind so you can understand the problem. So initially you think you're getting worse because you're seeing your mind more vividly. We want all the pain to go away because we can't stand the pain. That's understandable because it is painful. Even a little bit of paranoia, even a little bit of anxiety is painful. But to be racked with it all day, every day, which is some people's suffering, it's unbearable, So anyway, what do you think, people? Ask me some questions, darlings. What's going on in your lives? Talk to me. Nothing to say? Any questions? Nothing. So this is where actually, if we have confidence in the Buddhist path, and that's our call. If we have confidence in the presence of the Buddhas, I mean, we're human. We need to rely on something. We do need to rely on things. We need good friends. We need support. We need that. But we're not living on an island. We need support. We need to feel that support and trust it. Yes, even though my friend pointed out recently, one person we're discussing with this, well, if I'm relying upon you and you're going to die, then I can't rely upon you. No, well, nothing's impermanent. Everything's impermanent. Everything's impermanent. So within the fact that everything is impermanent, we then navigate our lives, So where have we got here? Brian. Hello, Brian. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? What's happening? Talk to me, Brian. You better unmute, I think, darling.
Yeah, unmute yourself, Brian. Thank you.
Hello, Venerable. Good morning.
Hello. Yes.
I think intellectually, everything is very logical and makes sense. You follow your thoughts like a hawk. You try and understand what's happening. I think the hardest thing, well, this is most probably going to be the work of a lifetime for me, is to catch those thoughts before you get a physical reaction.
That's right. That's the point, yeah. And that's what's hard, Brian. I think we've got to be really understanding this. I think we know all these words. I'm talking here these words, and we wouldn't even recognize them as Buddhism if we didn't know I'm talking Buddhism here, because it's kind of universal knowledge. And that's what Buddha's into. He's not making up some trip. He's observed the human mind. So I think the thing to remember is the subtlety to which our mind goes and the depth of the habit of these delusions, and how actually astonishingly hard it is to do exactly that. But so we've got to, when we know it's a long-term job, and you're right, then not to sort of, oh my God, I'm a failure. I'm not saying you're saying this. If you expect to, when you go to the gym for the first time, expect to come back looking perfect, then your expectation is the mistake, not the result. So the same here, we've got to have long-term view that if you have a person taken from the Buddhist perspective who is capable at that level, that's a pretty advanced being. That's a person who's done an immense amount of work. So we've got to have a lot of humility and patience with ourselves, and then we will delight in every tiny bit of progress. Do you understand? And then that's why, because we know it's going to take time, we can learn to have courage and learn to keep and delighting every day in our progress, not all the time, oh my God, I'm still a disaster. But that's where delighting in the good qualities can counterbalance the unhappy ones. That's why that's a crucial level of practice. That's exactly what Sunny was able to do. She was able to access her virtues, her goodness, her courage, her confidence, and that's what keeps us sane. Because her situation was like a nightmare, You can only imagine. It's like a cliched nightmare, but she was able to stay positive. So then whether the internal or external situation is the same, access the positive ones, delight in your progress, know that you're capable. Every tiny bit of progress you make, delight in it. I caught that one, I didn't, and that mitigates, that lessens, that calms the unhappiness down. This is very powerful. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. What else, darling people? Anything else? Who is there?
Venerable, may I ask you, could you speak about discipline in terms of, like when you were saying, we talk about a morning practice, for those of us who are not as naturally maybe disciplined as your friend that you're talking about, Sunny, to sit and to do that practice instead of getting up and going and out of bed and going on to your activities for the day. How do we cultivate that discipline?
Well, it's interesting in the Bodhisattva path, they talk, they talk about there's more advanced levels of the practices of the Bodhisattva, life after life. And the key one is called enthusiasm. The key one is they call it perseverance, enthusiasm, joyful effort. I mean, at any level of anything we do, just talking ordinary life, we know you could be the best gymnast, the cleverest, but if you don't have perseverance, you won't succeed. So it's obvious even in our ordinary life activity, we've got to have enthusiasm. And what is enthusiasm? So when we see the opposite of enthusiasm or the opposite of perseverance, it's called laziness, which sounds very brutal. But because of attachment, our instinct for attachment to our comfort zone is the most primordial. I mean, forget about attachment to being seen by others, that's the primordial, but attachment to our comfort zone, because of our addiction to our bodies and our physical feelings, every second of the day, we're trying to adjust our comfort zone to make it nice. So obviously, to do anything, to achieve any goal, what it means is the first kind of laziness is, I can't be bothered. And that's exactly the first one. That's the obvious one. I can't be bothered. So what is it we can't be bothered doing is the thing that takes effort. So enthusiasm, you get enthusiasm by making effort. So then so you have to make effort to get good at something. Even the smallest thing you have to accomplish, you have to go against the comfort zone, the craving for that. And there's going to be that point where it's painful. So then all the lamas say, when you know the benefits of something, then you'll have enthusiasm to do it, to persevere through the pain, because you can't avoid the pain. So the second kind of laziness is a more wicked one. It's more tricky. And this is really just like, it sounds like a virtue. Oh, I'm too busy, I'll do it later. But we all know later never comes. So it demands just, and everything is always difficult when you start to do it. But the Tibetans have a wonderful way of saying, we say practice makes perfect. Tibetans have this wonderful way of putting it. They say nothing gets more difficult with practice. So you've got to, and this is the other point too, you've got to have confidence that you can achieve it. So whether it's gym is ordinary samsara, but we're talking about our mind here. We have confidence that our mind isn't set in stone, if we have confidence that the mind can change, then no matter how chaotic you are right now, because you've got the confidence in that long-term potential, you will persevere a little bit. So then you know the benefit of doing something in a discipline where we all know our minds are chaotic. And especially that often express itself in our external world, where everything around us is chaotic. The kitchen's a mess, the room's a mess. In one sense, it doesn't matter, but it's a sign of the internal chaos, you know. So even if to have a discipline to make your house nice, to make it kind of just sort of express, it's a kind of it's respectful, actually. Give yourself a nice place. And then you just have a discipline, not brutal discipline, but just and then just having the discipline of just a short morning practice, ticking all the boxes, doing the things you want, and then you feel good about yourself. You feel good about yourself. I've done my practice. And then when you don't do it, the burden that you carry around of not doing it, the guilt is much more suffering, I promise. When we put off jobs for years and you do the job and you can't believe how quick it took, it was like nothing, and you relieve yourself of this burden. So this is one of our major problems. So to have confidence is possible, in for the long term, delight in your progress, and have a disciplined practice. These are the sort of kind of tools. They're like tools, you know, to use. Otherwise, we just will collapse into insanity. We all know that, because life can get really bad. I mean, we're not on death row yet. We haven't been accused of killing policemen yet. But, you know, things are impermanent. So while we're on while we've got a good thing, use it. And then when the serious problems come, we're equipped to handle them. So it's just making the determination. I mean, we all know that when you decide to do something, that's when you'll do it. That's the meaning of the word intention. It's volition. It's the fundamental thing that drives everything. I will. As Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish. I will. So you do it. The next morning you wake up, oh God, I'll do my practice later. No, catch yourself. No, Robina, just do it now, honey. And you go against that craving to turn over and go back to sleep. And you get up and 3 minutes later, you feel fine. We all know that. We've got to remember that. But the addiction to comfort, our comfort zone is very intense, you know. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's an excellent point about the comfort zone. It
Yes.
goes right to the heart of
that's the meaning. I mean, we are so hungry for feeling good. Just feeling good. You know, we can't stand not feeling good. And of course, when we're locked in that, that's like I say with Sunny's situation. She could, wherever she turned, she had no recourse to anything except her own mind. That was what was incredible, you know. That's why any of my friends in prison, Mitchell, he's on this garbage dump in Kentucky waiting to be executed, you know. It's just like, it's astonishing. I have such respect, you know, such respect. That's why we've got to start dealing with the small things, and then we can, when the bad things happen, we can cope, you know. Hopefully. Thank you, sweetheart. What else, people? Anybody else? Something else? Any other points, friends, dearest ones? Anything at all? No. You see, one of the things that the other one too, this is a really important point. This is hard to hear. This is, again, this discussion I've been having with a person lately. You know, this person, she's very, this is Tom, I won't be long, Tom. This person, she's a very good practitioner. She's very sincere. She's got good ethics. She really makes enormous effort. She's got integrity. She know, you know, but she, but it's like, but she over exaggerates her badness. She concretizes her badness, like we all do. So, you know, this is the point about the dirt coming out. I remember always quoting, you know, this story of one of our monks who over years and years of retreat had like outrageous levels of unbelievable rage and despair. He was really freaking out. And he went to Lama Zopa, and Rinpoche laughed and laughed and laughed and said, the dirt has to come out. The dirt has to come out. So this is very scary, because as soon as, you know, if you've got this ethics and good wish to have a good mind, and then you see your thoughts are out of control, you see your thoughts are crazy and angry, then of course you believe you're being angry, and you think you're just destroying yourself. But there's a huge difference between the old habit of anger coming up, like the dirt coming out in the washing machine. There's a difference between that and between actually consciously being angry and then wanting to follow it through, you know, buying into it. So if you can see all the junk coming up in the mind, I mean, the suffering and the pain, it's suffering. So, you know, you're not buying into this. You're not sort of, you're You're believing in these stories. You think everything's a nightmare, but you're not wanting to be angry. You're not wanting to be horrible. So that's the dirt coming out. There's a big difference between sitting there. In other words, if I'm like, you're my therapist, I say, Hillary's my friend, and I'm crying because I'm having a bad time with my boyfriend. And I come and I cry and I complain. He's evil. He's this, he's that. He did this to me. He did that to me. That's being angry, quote unquote. And you believe it, and you believe he's a monster. And I'm sitting there agreeing with you. That's being angry. But if you come to me and you're working on your mind and you're crying and all the anger's coming out, Robina, I don't know what to do about it. And the reason you're talking about it is because you want to change your mind. That's not being angry. We've got to see the difference, but not be scared of our minds. When we're really trying so hard to be good people, we're terrified of the negativity. We're terrified of it. We're absolutely freaked out as soon as a negative thought comes. We have a complete panic attack. That's too concrete. It's not being angry. It's like dirt coming out in the washing machine. You're glad when you see that dirt in the washing machine because now it's not in your clothes. The dirt is coming out. We've got to understand this. It's exactly the same. You go to the gym and you come home on the first day with pain that's unbelievable, with muscles you didn't know you have. But you don't go to the doctor with that pain because you know it's a good pain. That's exactly, but we've got to try and trust that process and not have a panic attack. I'm a bad person, all this anger, and then sit there for 4 hours trying to confess every single tiny negativity because you'll go crazy. It's too fanatic. And that's the function of all the delusions. They're very fanatic. They're very obsessive. Fundamentalist is a good word. This sort of very fixed in stone, fundamentalist. That's the pain of all the negative states of mind. They're so painful. Yes, Tom, talk to me.
Venerable Tom had put his question in chat, and I said I would read it for him. Okay. So Tom asks, I'm in a 9-year marriage and have always struggled with attraction to my wife. Never felt fully attracted, including the physical attraction. Along with this has come crush after crush over the years, and often thinking of being with my wife's cousin, who is also in a lengthy marriage. How would you label these emotions? What do I do with these emotions? Marriage seems so unnatural and feels almost like bondage at times. I hope I'm not asking too much. Thank you, Tom.
Well, so here, I mean, this is opening a can of worms, Tom, isn't it? Or a can of whatever we say. I mean, you know, just again, in my usual brutal, blunt approach, I would like to ask you, you know, why have you, I mean, we can't have a conversation because you don't want to be personal. And I accept that. But surely to ask yourself, this is one of the fundamental points we have to look at whenever a situation is bad, whether it's work, whatever it might be. We've really got 2 options, Tom. And the first question to ask yourself is, you know, I'm saying several things. The first point, I mean, in my blunt way, I want to say to you, well, then I'm wondering what has kept you there for 9 months, 9 years, you know. What has kept you there for 9 years? I understand that a marriage or a relationship isn't always related to sex, but you know what a marriage is in a conventional form includes that kind of intimacy. So, I mean, that's my first question to you. But the broader point is this, which is implied by this point, Tom. You've got precisely 2 options. And this is exactly why my example of Sunny is so profound. You either decide this is not a viable way to live. This situation is not appropriate. I'm not able to grow in this relationship. Don't blame her, but I'm not able to grow in this relationship. I'm feeling paralyzed. I'm feeling imprisoned, like whatever you were saying. So I have a choice. I should leave it. That's one option. Leave it. Go. Leave. The other option is, like Sunny, she had no choice, but you've got the choice. You're not in prison. No one's, you know, got a key in the door. No one prevents you from saying the words, I'm going to leave. No, I'm presuming that. This is why it's all our own mind. The other option is that you think about it, and this is what you should do. You think about this relationship and you weigh and you look at the advantages of it. Is there something else in this relationship that's good? Do you like this human being? Is there a connection between you? Are you worthwhile together? Have you got a good friendship? Is there something that is useful for you to grow as a human being? Now, if not, if there is, then you learn to change your mind. You can't, I mean, the one of being attracted to her, I presume it's a her. You can't, you know, you can't force that. You can't force that, you know. You can't force that. But you can learn to see some other good qualities. And you can learn to accept that you don't feel sexually attracted. So you got really have two options, basically, Tom. And this is very shocking for most of us because it's too terrifying. So you got to look at what it is in you that has caused you to stay there for 9 years when clearly you're not happy. I mean, it's our mind, yeah. I mean, whatever it is, but look at that, because there's nothing wrong with leaving a relationship. But what holds us back? I mean, I think it's our culture. We have this, certainly if we've come from a Christian culture, it's wrong to get divorced. So we have this assumption it's naughty. And then because we have this deepest attachment, Tom, this craving to be seen as a good boy or a good girl. So, you know, the fear of what people think, the fear of the criticism you'll get, or we say, oh, but I'll hurt her if I do it. Or maybe you're hurting her a lot worse by being in there. So we've got but if you narrow it down, it is brutal. There are precisely two options, Tom. One is you feel, you check, you realize it's not worthwhile. You're just being miserable. You don't know how to change yourself. Don't blame her, but you know this is not the right situation for you, and you decide to leave it. And the other one is you just think about it, and you think there's something worthwhile. You've got to look at the relationship, and then you accept. So Sonny was able to see even good things in this nightmare in prison. So there must be some good things there, Tom, because if you only see the bad things, that's exactly the point why we go crazy. I mean, it's kind of brutal. There's a lot of work to unpack and unravel these two concepts, but that's the bottom line. In each case, as Sonny kept saying to me, I knew I had the choice. So in each case, Tom, you have got the choice. You have to exercise that choice and have the courage to choose either to change the situation or to change your mind. And this is why most of us suffer. Whether it's our job, our relationship, we live in utter misery. Or you could leave your job. No, I can't do that, can't do that. Well, you could try and see the good things. No, there are no good things. So we end up just like living in insanity. We've got to see we've got a choice. This is what Sonny said, and it's so moving and so simple. You either leave or you stay. And if you stay, you decide to stay. Don't feel like you're being imprisoned. You decide there's something worthwhile here. You decide to see more good qualities in this person. And as for, you know, having fantasies about your cousin, her cousin, well, that's just more suffering for you, isn't it? Because attachment is never happy with what it's got. Attachment is always looking outside. The grass is always greener, isn't it? I mean, it's not easy, Tom. There's an unbelievable amount of work in the two things I've just said. But have the courage to decide. And have, you know, I know that, you know, you as a human being have got so much. You're a good human. You've got good humor. You're an ethics. You're a nice person. You've got so much you could do in this life. And all you're doing now is paralyzing yourself. We all do this. So know that you've got a lot of potential. You've got so much you can give, and there's so much you could learn and grow in another environment. Maybe this isn't the right environment. Don't blame the environment, but know that if you've got the luxury to choose, you can leave it. And if you decide no, and you decide you're going to stay, you look at the good things and you make the most of it, like Sonny did on death row. And that's for every single one of us in this room, you know, not just Tom. Tom just asked the question, that's all. What else, darling people? I mean, this is tough stuff, you know. What else, darlings? Anything else? Nothing.
Tom has a follow-up question, Venerable.
Who does?
Tom does.
Good, Tom. Wonderful. Good. What is it, Tom? Unmute, Hillary.
I don't see his question, actually. Oh, I'm sorry. It seems the monogamy piece is problematic in our culture too. I wonder if you have further thoughts on that.
It's a question of agreement, Tom. I mean, it's our culture, you know, but lots of people decide not to be monogamous. So if you think that's a solution, but that's right, but I think that's an extra point to go on top of, I think. You want to have your cake and eat it too a bit, my sense is. I think there's two fundamental choices you've got to do first. You've got to do these first two things first. So, you know, if you do decide there's something, but that's often, okay. You can have 47 wives, you know. I mean, Tibetans have a habit. The nomads, the tradition in Tibet was they didn't have a legal thing of marriage. It was like a convenient relationship. So there's a very common habit, I think still, where one woman would have two husbands. Two brothers would marry the one woman. Maybe they didn't have much jealousy and much drama. It was nothing special for them. So, you know, that's in a way, it's like, as a, you know, I've many different, I mean, yeah, of course, nothing wrong with that. But if it's going to come from the wrong place where you want to have your cake and eat it too, you're just going to cause yourself more misery and you're going to harm people. So you want to stay with your wife whom you don't like, but go and have sex with somebody else. I mean, if you decide that the relationship is worthwhile, that means you've got to like this woman. You've got to love this woman. You mightn't want to have sex with her, but you've got to look at that, because sexual attachment is attachment of any kind, you know. And then if there's an agreement and you decide she's really worthwhile and it's a wonderful relationship and it's very nourishing, but you want to get sex somewhere else, then you've got to discuss it with her. But I mean, I think the fundamental point is, do you want to be there or do you want to go? You know, that's what to decide, Tom. That's my thought. This is my thought. What else? Nothing else, people. Yes. Who was I saw a little hand up there. Whose hand was that?
Linda.
Oh, Linda, good. Talk to me, sweetheart.
Hello, Venerable.
Hello.
Yes, so I don't know. I'm trying to formulate my thought here. I'm having a
Okay.
little trouble.
Do your best.
I have fibromyalgia, so that's part of the thing. So, you know, I actually was trained as a therapist, so I was kind of naturally drawn to this. Plus, I have sat with a meditation group in the past,
Yeah.
but I'm way out of practice, and I'm kind of a mess. But
Okay.
anyway, my thoughts are that it seems that the negative thoughts are to keep us protected and to keep us safe. I'm not going to elaborate on that more, but it seems that way in our twisted mind that we have these negative thoughts, and our mind thinks, you know, if it feeds us these negative things, it's going to keep us safe and limited, kind of out of the flight and fight pattern is kind of what I'm thinking. And then so the bigger thing is, you know, that comes out of, you know, a bigger attachment to this life, you know, so that's to keep us safe. And, you know, because we're so attached to this life. And I myself, you know, experience, you know, depression, and I know that other people do too. And when I'm in depression, it's hard for me to override the negative, even though I might have the knowledge.
That's right, exactly.
To try to influence, it's difficult.
That's right. That's the difficulty, Linda. Yes, exactly. So what's the question, darling?
Well, what I mean, what would, you know, Buddhism say about, I mean, the negative? So
I know, I understand your point. The Buddhist approach is that these unhappy states of mind, attachment and anger, which cause so much fear and distress in our mind, we can't stop them, we're overwhelmed, we even feel the physical consequences of it, we can't see past our own noses. The Buddha's very simple approach is, and this is the Buddha's approach, he's found from his own experience that these are kind of made up stories, and they're the source of our pain, but they're not set in stone, and we can learn to rid the mind of them. So that's, for us, is a bit odd, because we give them equal status in modern psychology, and your question kind of implies this, and we would consider their normal parts, and we even say that they help us to, you know, help us defend ourselves and so on. But the Buddhist approach is the virtuous qualities. If I use Sunny as the example, living in this utter nightmare in death row, wrongly accused, husband executed, kids gone, family dead, like a nightmare, no one believing her, she didn't need those negative thoughts. They're the ones that make you go insane. So she kept her sanity and her clarity. She did her yoga every day. She did her practice. She knew she had a choice to try and see the good things, and that sustained her. So the Buddhist approach is, we don't need this rubbish. I mean, it's a shock to hear this, because it's the usual view of the mind. It's the view of neuroscience. It's a view of our psychology. So it's just an interesting thing to look at, Linda, that's all. That's a general point. That's all, sweetheart. What do you think? I mean, I think it's a different hypothesis for sure. So maybe it's worth looking at, that's all. Because they're the ones that cause pain.
I'm sorry?
They're the ones that causes pain.
Yes. And so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's in a twisted way. The mind thinks it's keeping us safe by telling us these negative things, but in reality, it's keeping us very limited most of the time.
That's right.
Unless it's some real fear, it's like extrapolated onto to things that are just craziness. So, you know, it seems it comes from that place of wanting to keep us safe, but yet then it keeps us very limited.
And that's exactly right. And so the Buddhist approach is, if we look at the positive qualities, they've got some spaciousness and some clarity about them, and we can make all the right choices when they're prevailing. But if we're trying to this is where Yeah, so that's the thing we have to look at, the practical aspect of the qualities, the advantages of the positive states of mind that are more reasonable, more spacious. They can see different options. But when we're kind of paralyzed in this fear, we can't see anything. We're just set in stone. It's horrible, you know. So it's an interesting point anyway. It's a very good point.
So I like that. I just want to, and the reason I'm interrupting you is just because otherwise I'll forget. So
Yeah.
can you talk more about the positive, you said the qualities, the spaciousness, you know?
Well, you have a look at yourself in your own life. Just check your own life. When you're paranoid, angry, jealous, depressed, anxious, you feel very separate. You feel very lonely. You feel very concrete. Everything looks very terrible. Now check the other times when you've had good communication with somebody. There's empathy, there's kindness, there's love. There's so different states of mind, aren't they? Just look at your own experience. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I wasn't aware that he talked that much about, I don't have that much experience, but I wasn't aware that he talked about the positive states that much. I mean, I'd be more interested in hearing more about that.
That's the fundamental view about the mind in Buddhism. There's much writing about it, is that the mind in its our mind has this incredible potential to be full of the wisdom and clarity and joy and love, that they are at the core of our being. And that's why in the initial stages of Buddhist practice, you're dealing with the rubbish, you're dealing with the weeds in the garden. So you've got to focus on them. The reason you get rid of the weeds is so you can grow the flowers. So the end result of a person who's done this job is a very radiant, blissful, clear, loving, compassionate, empathetic person. That's the point. That's the whole point of the whole exercise. Do you understand?
Yes, I do. I don't know how I missed that piece. I mean, maybe I got it before, but I don't. I'm a very empathic person. I'm sorry, what?
It's easy to do it, Linda, because in the beginning stages of Buddhist practice, they talk about anger, attachment, anxiety. We get obsessed with them. Got to get rid of them. Got to get rid of them. Got to get rid of them. We sort of forget about the big picture, you know.
Mm-hmm. Why does he say they're there? Is it just a natural part of being a human?
What is? What?
The negative,
there, but the Buddha's, he's found they are natural insofar as we have them, but not natural insofar as they're set in stone. That's the major difference the Buddha makes. He's found from his own experience, from his own inner work. It's just my modern words of putting what Buddha is, that these can be rid of, that these are not at the core of our being. That actually, Linda, in the long term is the meaning of this word nirvana. You've achieved your nirvana. It's not some place like heaven, when you've cut all the delusions and developed your goodness to perfection. That's nirvana, darling. That's what it means. Just sounds like religion, but it's Buddhist psychology. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Well, a good point to end on, darling people. Just have to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Never give up, never give up, never give up, okay? Long-term perspective, confidence in our potential, no matter how bad things get. Try and loosen the mind. Try and recognize our good qualities. If we're so obsessed with the negative ones, make an effort to think of the good ones. You have to do it. Like Sunny was forced to do that. She was living in an utter nightmare, but she was forced to see the good things. And that's what kept her sane. That's what gave her confidence and courage. This is exactly what we have to do. All right, precious ones. Thank you. Much love. Goodbye. Until next Monday. Thank you, sweethearts.
Thank you very much.